Well, listen, is this your first DCAC?
This is my first DCAC. I've heard legends.
Oh, you've heard legends. Well, look, don't tell me that because I'm definitely going to underperform on that level. But do me a favor. I just had the opportunity and privilege to meet you for the first time myself, but introduce yourself to any of the listeners.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for the opportunity.
Sure.
I'm Saurabh. I'm the founder and chief executive of Doxel AI.
Yes.
We automate progress and schedule tracking for construction projects using the best software you've ever seen.
So let's unpackage a few of those things. First of all, where are you from?
I'm from San Francisco Bay Area,
Okay.
but I'm kind of a global citizen. So I was born in California,
Okay.
in a hospital that's now a Doxel customer, by the way.
No kidding.
Years ago. I grew up in India, came back to Dubai, and then round trip back to San Francisco Bay Area again.
What brought you back to San Francisco Bay Area?
The opportunity. I mean,
But like, what was the opportunity?
the opportunity to innovate. And
Okay,
I mean,
but that's your thing. You've always been like a tech nerd. I mean that as a reverence, a term of respect.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I've always been around engineering.
Okay.
My dad's an engineer. My dad's actually from manufacturing. So I grew up on the shop floor. My dad believes in child labor. That's a joke. He put me to work at the age of 7, and I started.
And look at you now.
I started programming, manufacturing feedback systems. I started commissioning massive manufacturing facilities, and it brought some significance to my life. Like as an 8-year-old, the adults
Nice.
actually cared about me because I was the only one who could program the PLC to run the furnace. My dad used to manufacture
8?
copper.
Were you in San Francisco or were you in Dubai?
No, in India.
Oh,
In
okay,
India.
gotcha.
So engineering just felt like this thing that was bringing significance, that made me important, which as an 8-year-old was very
That's
special.
all we want. Yeah.
Right? And then as I grew up, I just fell in love with building things. So San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley seemed like the place to do that for disruptive innovations. And
So tell me,
moved
what
back.
the name, where does Doxel come from? What does that mean? What does that name mean?
So, like I said, we track schedules automatically using cameras and using 360 cameras. And the word Doxel is basically a 4-dimensional voxel, and a voxel is a
So
3-dimensional
nerdy.
pixel.
I love these big
It's
tech
very
brains.
nerdy.
You guys
right?
with your big old
But
brains.
the most important thing is that we're working with real customers. We love working with them. We love making a difference in their lives.
Does
And
it target
what's in a name?
Oh, no, look, there's a lot of stuff I want to unpackage because I have a GC firm, right? And I would love to understand how this technology would help our firm, or I'm not sure if it's more for the enterprise end user to use for their stuff, but we'll get to some of that stuff. But before we did, I'd like to just spend a couple minutes. So like, you live in the Bay Area still?
Yeah.
Okay. And you went back there and you're a builder, but it sounds like you're an entrepreneur as well. But you're a builder in the sense like you're building technology platforms to help builders build. Or did you start from, was the genesis of this where you were on the building side itself and you realized it was missing a tool and someone was probably using a spreadsheet or something to solve a schedule problem? And you're like, how did you know this problem existed that needed this Doxel software, this stuff? Well, this solution that you put together, it wasn't arbitrary. It sounds like you've been a pretty intentional builder since you were 8. So how did you know what you needed to build, and what was the demand or drive coming from?
Yeah. So the exposure I had, so like I said, I was mostly in manufacturing, but the exposure I had to construction was my dad's factories were always constructed and delivered late. So the manufacturing facility would run amazing, right? 24/7, amazing production rates and all that. But the construction was always late. And the first one that he built actually almost bankrupted our family. And, we experienced some pretty hard times when I was young. So,
That's where it comes from. That's where the grit and the chip on the shoulder comes from. And that's interesting because that'll help people understand you better when they want to talk to you. Now they know where you came from and why. This was to survive, right? It sounds like you guys had to do this out of necessity.
Yeah, and I mean, pretty much like fast forward 20 years, it's not like I grew up thinking I'm going to build a tool for construction, but I was curious that why is the operation of facilities so efficient, but the construction of those facilities has all these things going wrong and it's so hard to manage. So I started emailing people in the construction space, and they said that the biggest problem is that they don't find out about problems fast enough. And that's when
who were the people that you were,
Doxel.
when you started contacting people, was it the end user that was contracting people to build for them, or were you going to the contracting teams and the design teams and saying, hey, I want to get in the earliest stages? I mean, how did there's two different groups. Who did you target to adopt this?
So I started out taking meetings with whoever would give me a meeting. We were a 2-person company back then. And initially I started out emailing general contractors. And there was a very nice gentleman who basically said that the value is not really in the pictures you guys are taking. The value is in telling me whether or not I should approve a pay application. And the value is whether or not I'm on schedule. So that then led to this realization that, okay, the value really is in the analytics, not in the raw photos themselves, because anyone can go look at photos or walk the job site or whatever, right? But the real value is in the analytics. So that's how it began. So our first customers originally, a general contractor gave us the idea, frankly, but our first customers were owners, because then we started talking to owners and we thought maybe owners would want this as well. And now, over the course of 8 years, we've come back full circle. So we basically work with owners and general contractors with a suite of products. So we work with owners like HCA Healthcare, 2 of the 4 big hyperscalers, as well as we're very lucky to work with the folks who actually build these facilities, like Turner Construction, Sunt, so on and so forth. So at this point in time, we work with both entities, but I started off, frankly, taking a meeting with whoever.
Anybody. Yeah, when you're an entrepreneur, you're like,
I was just trying to learn.
Every deal counts.
Yeah,
Still
I was just trying to
does,
learn.
I mean, like everything matters. But what were you seeing? Who got it? I would imagine the contractors got it because they're so immersed in those complicated challenges every day that they were probably the first ones to discover the value in it, or was it the hospitals that were building their?
I'd say it was both, but we started to get our initial traction, and this is 8 years ago. So the industry has evolved a lot in 8 years, and we've grown a lot in 8 years. But we started to get a lot of traction from recurring owners as well as large contractors, right? Because they would see these problems time and time again, and they wanted more transparent overview into their schedules, into their pay applications, to know how they're trending so that they can land projects ahead of budget, ahead of schedule. So the initial traction, to cut a long answer short, was from large recurring contractors and owners.
That makes sense.
That's
what I would have. That's what I would have assumed. But
because you got to be burned enough times.
Oh yeah, I mean, like 8 years. You've been doing this for 8 years now.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 8 years.
I mean, you got to even cast them. I'm sure you got all kinds of scars too that go with it, right? I mean, it's a bloodbath. You're in a software game in a very kinetic environment with an industry that reinvents itself every month. They're not sure. They haven't standardized on processes and protocols of any kind. The ways that we build data centers today are massively different than what we were doing a year ago, let alone 8. And try to imagine how we build data centers a year from now, let alone 8 years from now. And that technology that innovation that you're giving us to build the sky for the cloud is allowing us to do it more efficiently. But what's the tipping point for that? And what does your software do to replace others? Like, do I need Procore if I'm still using yours, or is it parallel into that? Or like, what would I use it for or in place of? And then what can I use it for in parallel of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, I want to make a quick exception and talk about one of the points you made, which is about a lack of standardization. And you asked what the tipping point is. There's generally a lack of standardization when a software tool is not easy to implement. Okay.
100%.
That's when people don't adopt it. If it takes 3 months to implement something and your project lasts a year, guess what? You're going to say bye to those people. You're going to be building a different design, different materials, with different people the next time. And who's going to spend another 3 months implementing that? So in my experience, things start to get standardized when they're quick and easy to implement.
Okay? I agree with that.
Right? And of course, they have to provide value. They have to be able to provide that value without a lot of resources from the construction team itself, because they've got a lot of other stuff to do. So that's the first real quick thing that I wanted to mention about standardization. And that's something that we believe very deeply, that our software has to be very fast to implement. It takes 2 weeks to implement it, and it has to have little to no resources. So we take 1 hour of one person's time, like a project manager or a VDC director or manager, to get our software up and running.
So that almost sounds too
good to be true. And that's the tipping point, by the way.
That's too good to be true, it sounds. So like, let's scratch the paint with that. Not that I don't believe you, but I want the listeners to have the opportunity to believe you.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
I would say this, what you're talking about is nirvana, right? Having a complicated, I mean, the analytics that this thing probably tracks is robust. And if you've been working on it and tweaking it for 8 years, I understand that you can do a lot in 8 years, especially with the way that we innovate as an industry. How does that get implemented in a way in which it's not invasive to a business? No one wants to go 2 steps backwards so they go under the promise they could get 3 steps forward, knowing that there's no guarantee, right? And I think that's the struggle. If you're moving at such a high speed, low drag, and the fear of the unknown is always worse than the fear of the known, right? So you're sitting here going, look, this isn't ideal, but it works. And I know that I could be predictable with this, but you're saying, no, it's worth the risk. I have this other tool that are either layers on top of it or in replace of or in parallel of. And if you do that, it's not invasive and it has impact of visibility to X, Y, and Z. Like, how is that pitch? I mean, that's these really sophisticated people that are going to spend money on this stuff. They're like, I want it to work. I want it to be great. I want it to cost very little. And I don't want to have to suffer time or setbacks because of it. So what was the trend and what was the theme you were seeing? And not the pushback, but the people that are asking questions as they pressure test your product.
That's a great question. So I'm going to answer this question as well as the previous question in one go, which is you asked, what does it replace? And that's actually the answer to how easy is it to implement and how do people adopt it. What it replaces is a blueprint that superintendents have their trades color. Okay. And some folks may call that archaic and this and that, but who cares? It gets the job done. So literally what we did was our latest product, work in place tracking, a superintendent gave us the idea. He said, hey, I got this blueprint, my trades color it in. Can you guys produce a visualization instead of all these charts and graphs that you guys are throwing up there? Because that's great for the finance folks who you're getting traction from, but I want something color-coded. So that's what we went out and did. And why do I mention that? Because if you replace something that's an existing workflow, you're going to get adoption from the field. That's how you're not invasive to a business. And that's what we did. So honestly, I'm not teaching this industry anything. I'm just learning from this industry and digitizing things that they've been doing for years and years and years, making it easier. And that's the answer to how you're not invasive to a business. You know?
But you're saying, hey, look, it takes 2 weeks,
2 weeks to implement.
2 weeks to implement, and I'm going to be invasive enough to have support from one person on your team for an hour. 1 hour a day or
1 hour.
That's it.
That's it.
How does it plug in and become that intuitive to where people don't need follow-on training and guidance? Is it that intuitive, I guess?
First of all, one, it's very intuitive because of what I just talked about. Second, we pull the BIM and we pull the schedule, and then we track against both of those. So we use the tools that you've already built without needing.
Let's say they use one Microsoft projects instead of Primavera or whatever. Sure. I mean, like, does it matter? Are you neutral to all those things?
We integrate with both of those. We support Autodesk on the BIM side as well as Bentley. We are partners with Procore as well as Oracle. So we integrate with the tools that folks love to use. And then last but not the least, our software incorporates rules of credit. So we've tracked so many million square feet at this point that our software incorporates rules of credit. Our software knows.
What's that mean?
What that means is when you're pumping out percent complete, if you do something like pump out percent complete based on number of components in the BIM, that just assumes that all components are created equal. And you'll have a situation where you're reporting structural steel is 5% done when it's actually 30% done. But because our software has tracked so much now, it already incorporates rules of credit, meaning that it knows that supports are worth this much, ducts are worth this much, insulation is worth this much, equipment is worth this much, and it spits out a percent complete that's native to the way folks are building. And that's, again, how you're not invasive to a business and how you can get set up and running very quickly. It took time, by the way. This wasn't easy, right? It took a lot of
Let's
building.
back up and let's unpackage that, because I get excited when I deal with new stuff too. So I could sit here and ask questions all day about these things, but let's talk a little bit about you. So you bounced around a little bit. It sounds like the circumstances of your life brought you back to the Bay Area. And because you were in that's the mecca of innovation of technology between there and, the Pacific Northwest, that's where all of that comes from, and you chose to, you could have built anything, but you're like, I'm going to build a software platform that's going to support the builders, not the operations teams. And with that,
I love operations teams, but yes, the builders.
Well, and does it integrate into building automation systems?
Not
is that where you're going to scale to, or is that just a whole nother vertical?
We're fully focused on delivering data centers faster. Right? We're fully focused on delivering facilities faster. We're focused on the construction space right now. So sorry, I think I cut off your flow though.
No, you're good. No, okay. There's no flow. You can interrupt me all you want. I love the disruptive back and forth. It's better. My thing is you were explaining how there's a product that you created, and there's people that are involved with the usage of that product, and they all have a different agenda. And it's not in a negative way.
Sure.
If some people are project engineers, and they're going to be looking at it from that perspective, as they're maybe checking RFIs or submittals. You have people that are on the finance side of the project that are trying to understand ARAP and making sure that
Verify pay apps.
Pay apps. Yeah. But then you have maybe people in leadership that are like, no, I don't care about, all that. I just want to see we're on track or ahead or behind it, and by so which metric, and that tool serves all of those clients that fall within one client, right? So the aperture that you view these clients that you're building this application for, how does that look and how does that work?
You mean in terms of the
How
inherent
will it
conflict?
evolve? Yeah, no, I mean, you said that there was a person that said, hey, I like the fact that I could use the value. One of the general contractors, like, the real value is it tells us when to do our submittals or when to do pay apps, right? So, I mean, that's a really great example. Was that a byproduct or was that intentional?
Yeah, so I think that our focus is on delivering faster, and we're very strong believers that field teams are the ones who deliver faster. We sell to both general contractors and to owners. But even when we sell to owners, we encourage them to involve their general contractors early, because our view is that if everyone's not on board, then no one is on board, right? So that's how we attempt to, and we're successful at ensuring that owners are supportive of this tool being a tool for the field that also gives them transparency, but is primarily for the field to be able to build much faster. So
What are some of the biggest challenges you're seeing right now?
in data centers in general?
Yeah, in the delivery of right now, the number one product that this industry sells is speed to market. And you're providing a tool that allows them to have access to a greater volume or velocity of speed to market.
That's right.
It seems like if everyone knew about it, there's no one that wouldn't adopt that, because right now everyone wants faster speed to market. What are you seeing is trends in the industry that are more accretive for your product to be more successful?
Yeah, so the first trend that I'm seeing that's accretive is project controls talent coming into the data center
Project
industry.
controls?
Project controls from the oil and gas sector.
Interesting.
Right? So I'm seeing a lot of hyperscalers, and we work with 2 of the 4 of them, are bringing in talent from project controls in oil and gas because they have so much experience building complex facilities. And it's a problem of success where data centers are exploding and booming so fast that I'm seeing a lot of project controls talent come in. With the project controls talent, what's coming in is data, because with project controls comes a general way of building that's very metrics focused, that's lean oriented, right? And I'm seeing that come in. The third thing that I'm seeing that's accretive to our business is a lot of maturity in buying trends in software. So the bad habits of the zero interest rate environment have kind of gone away, where folks don't want to spend time anymore on software that takes 3, 4, 5 months to implement for a grand vision. They want something that's quick to implement and that provides incremental value that they can recognize today.
Who uses it? Who's it? Like, someone's got that tool is only as good as it's great. Like any software tool, I'm painting with a broad stroke, not your technology, but sure, it's only as good as the data that gets into it. So, like on a Procore, I used to buy iPads for my projects and give the PMs Procore, load it up on an iPad, and they would walk around and take pictures with the iPad, and it goes right into the app. It's intuitive, and I would tell them the things they needed. And if there was a problem to schedule a critical path,
sure,
it was intuitive like that. Is yours designed for the PM to walk around with, and would they use it as an application on top of something that they are responsible for updating as a living and breathing program until completion? But who's responsible for managing the input that goes into that thing?
Yeah, so the only input that's needed is a walk.
Okay, so
someone walks around, like a field engineer walks around, it captures 360 imagery, it gets uploaded to the cloud. Our software goes boop, 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 boop. This is where you're ahead, this is where you're behind. And the superintendent consumes that data on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis to hold trades accountable. So the only input that's needed is a walk, right? Now, the big
every
question...
day?
Usually folks do it twice a week. right? Some folks do it every day. Like we have large customers in the electric vehicle space. They do it every day in some cases. Now, I'll tell you, if someone doesn't do a walk that week and our general contractors capture on their own, there won't be any outcome. There won't be any data that comes out. But the way we solve that is superintendents actually start relying on and consuming this data. So the way that you ensure that the data that goes in is accurate and is right, which in our case is a walk, is you make sure that the person on the end really gets value from it.
And for them, that value is they should look at it as a tool that helps them not cover their ass, but a lot of us work with a deterrence, right? Meaning like it's either the carrot or the stick. And I mean, we all want the carrot. That's the bonus. That's the more freedom, more job position, more autonomy. The stick is don't get your shit done and we're going to hold you accountable. If you like you, we'll train you up and give you another option. If not, we're going to show you the way out. That person that's using this tool needs to buy in on the fact that this is something that can be used to save their life or advance their career, right?
Absolutely. But it's not anything, it's just doing something better that's always been done, which is checks and balances, right? And helping trades speed up and managing the job in a manner where you mitigate rework and you mitigate trade stacking because folks aren't stepping on each other's toes, and that just helps everyone.
So what have you found so far? I love technology and new applications of platforms or hardware because they never do what you think they're going to do. Like you have an intent and you have a plan and then you introduce it. And like I was talking to one of the guys at Fortnite years ago here, right? And he's like, clearly we didn't know the adoption rate of this technology. Like we didn't know. They have no idea who's going to adopt what game or what's going to be the fad of that kind.
Sure.
Tell me some of the cool surprises that you've discovered where like, yeah, we did this, but we discovered it does this too. And I mean, like it happens to all of us. I've done things and I'm like, I'm going to have to check this box. So we're going to do this part too, but let's really focus on these things because I think this is what they want. And later on, people are like, I need more of that.
Oh,
more cowbell. So tell me what you've learned. Yeah, this journey of being an entrepreneur. I mean, you have a cool story. I mean, like there's going to be another podcast that you're not going to have to do under different circumstances when I don't have such a restriction of time. But I would love to unpack some of those things because those are the jewels that people learn from. We could learn from each other's mistakes because the mistakes are where all the growth comes from. So what have you done that has pleasantly worked out in your favor and it was a byproduct of something that it was unintentional, but it's been...
Yeah, I'll give you 2 examples real quick. So we automate progress tracking, right? So when we started out, we said, okay, what they teach you in startup land, et cetera, is follow the money. So we said, okay, cool. Seems pretty important. There was a general contractor who told us, I pump out 200 million every month, and maybe I'm only 80% accurate in every month, right? So we said, okay, that seems like a very big problem. Let's start solving that. So the first use case that we applied this to was verification of the applications. And that was very successful. Then there was a general contractor who said, hey, you know what? For us, especially on a GMP project, what's more important is schedule because that manages our margin, right? So then we integrated with the schedule. Then we had a situation where a superintendent was like, you guys are giving them all these Gantt charts and it's like Big Brother. Why do I not have the same data? And we said, what are you talking about? You have that data. You can see the same Gantt charts. And he said, no. I want it in this format because that's what my trades understand. It takes a long time to say activity CB 102 is X% complete. He's like, that means nothing, man. You need to give me this data in a blueprint, colored in this format. And we said, you know what? He's right. We apologize. We said we didn't even realize that our software was being relied upon so much that it's going to begin to become a challenge for you because we're here to help you. And we didn't realize that something that's simple for us, which is this visualization, was an impediment to y'all doing what we built the software to do. So we accepted that. We went out, we built this blueprint-like feature, and oh man, it just took off from there because it brought the boardroom and the field room together, right? So it unites owners and GCs on an objective record of truth of what actually happened. And the funny thing is, superintendents are the ones who are asking for it on their sites, right? Superintendents are now our number 1 user category.
100%.
Which is amazing.
Look, make no mistake, they're the ones that are building these things.
Exactly.
I mean, the project managers are managing the bullshit, the schedule, maybe some politics and diplomacy, but I mean, like those supers are the ones that are moving the needle, right? So it's important to get them in your corner. If they are, then that's why I asked, I'm like, who's adopting it? Because if it's being forced down their throat, that doesn't scale. But
Yeah,
if
and
it's
it's not
something that
good
they
business
find value
strategy.
in, it's good, right?
Yeah.
This is really cool. This is I'm really excited that we had this conversation. I wasn't sure about your product before this, but I'm really happy that I get the opportunity to learn about it firsthand from you directly. But what are some of the other things that you want some of the listeners that have not heard of this product, like why should they use it? And I mean, is it like a software as a service? They don't have to buy it. They could lease it on a monthly basis until
Yeah.
they don't need it, or how's it work?
Yeah, so we're software as a service that delivers data centers faster on average by 11%. And we do that using a very, very simple, non-invasive method, which is basically putting on a very lightweight camera on a hard hat and just piggybacking on the walks that general contractors already do, and providing proactive insight into where projects are ahead and behind. But the main reason why people use us, like I said, is because they get to deliver data centers faster. And this industry has a lot of problems of success right now, which is that it's booming so fast. There's so much pressure on design teams, construction teams, as well as commissioning teams to build faster. And I'm really proud of the work that's happening in the construction space right now in this sector to eliminate rework, to eliminate trade stacking, and to not accept what has been accepted for like 100 plus years. We're innovating our way out of it to grab that opportunity in spite of the labor shortage, in spite of the supply chain issues, and we're delivering data centers faster. So that's inspiring to me.
That's inspiring a lot. I'm really excited by your passion for your product, but also by the way it sounds like. I mean, I've been in this game for a bit. I've never heard of it, but that's not because of me. I mean, that just means like I've been so entrenched in the foxhole myself that you can't get ahead when you're struggling to get even sometimes. And there's a lot of people that don't. There's a ton of great things that are out there that exist that could benefit us, but what good are they if I don't know about them, right? So I think the trick for you is understanding that this has a lot of value. How do I help you unleash this so others can discover the value that it brings? I mean, that's what it is. People aren't really, when it comes to software, at least, I don't think people are really like to be sold to that. They just want to discover the value that it brings them, and then they'll make a purchasing decision on their own, right?
Yep.
So what's some of the challenges that you've seen trying to take this product to market, and what are the things that we can do, on our platforms to help bring this out? Because if you don't understand how I'm wired, I want to advance the industry, right? And I don't care whose idea it is. I mean, this isn't what we do for a living. This is what we do for once a year to have fun and to try to shake things up. What we do is go out and build data centers, and we have staff augmentation teams, staff placement teams, and we have, general contracting teams. So we would be adopters of this technology, and we could use this as an owner's representative. We don't play Caesar. Our clients, they hire us to execute their vision and their dream. But there are times that some of these clients will ask us for their input. Owners reps are a third dimension for you, where if you're going to the enterprise end user and you're going to, the contractors themselves, there's a third rail. And that third rail is there's trusted advisors. Those advisors it's like a doctor. Like owner's representation is like medical profession. Like I don't need a doctor on staff all the time, but I need one when I break my wrist, and I want the best one when I need it, right? And the more volatile it is, I mean, if we're going to get into my heart or my brain, I want someone that's done that 1,000 times, not someone that just did this for the last few. So what I'm saying is, how do we bring this whole thing to life and let it get more light of the day, I guess?
Sounds like a conversation we need to have right after this podcast.
Well, there's a lot of good ideas, but the thing that I found, especially when it comes to software, is it could be the greatest shit on earth, but if it's going to take me a lot of brain damage to fix it, the juice ain't worth the squeeze. And if this pencils well, and it's something that I can find value in as a general contractor, but I could go recommend and validate that to other GCs as an owner's rep, or to the enterprise end user as an owner's rep, because it's not always these clients that we build for are armed to the teeth, right? But there are times that they ask us to be like, hey, have you heard of any new, in fact, it's not only welcome, it's expected of us to be submitting ideas for better means and methods or materials that we could use to deliver product faster and cheaper. So to that end, this is something that I feel needs to probably be better understood. And I don't know how to do that. I mean, I leave that to you to figure that out, and I'm here to help. But I think if it's that great, and you're saying on average, you're improving delivery times by 11%. Is that what you said?
Yep, on average.
And why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we? Even if you paid, what's the time value of money for a 10% increase on schedule? Does it have a reduction in cost, and does that pencil itself out, right? I mean, whatever the business case is that justify it, I want to hear. I'm imagining that you've had some really smart people poke holes at this in resistance already that you've had to overcome in over 8 years. And it sounds like you have a lot of clients. You've probably had to overcome a lot of challenges and evolve towards it. What are some of those things that you take away from it? You know?
The biggest, I would say, look, let's zoom out for a second, right? If everything I'm saying is true, it should be a no-brainer, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm like.
Because if you deliver 3-4 months faster, you're going to generate more revenue. You're going to clip off that 8-10% that you're paying on the capital you're borrowing for a developer. So there's a massive time value of money component, given that interest rates are so high. It's a no-brainer, and the software more than pays for itself. But that's the key. The key is, can folks believe what I'm saying? Can folks believe what other vendors are saying, right? Because folks have been burned in the past. And the biggest pushback or something that customers challenge us on, and I'm so grateful that customers challenge us on this, is it actually simple to implement? And is it actually going to take almost no resources? And the way we overcome that now is because we've been in the industry for 8 years, we put them on the phone with some of our superintendents and some of our customers, and we just say, hey, ask them. We don't coach anyone on what to say. We just say, hey, tell them the good and the bad. You know,
that's all you can
and let's just be authentic. And the product just sells itself. In fact, our customers sell the product for us just by us doing that.
What are some of the other trends you're seeing in the market and that are going to require you to continue to iterate your product? It's going to have to continue to evolve.
Yeah. So one of the, just piggybacking off of the previous trend that I mentioned about project controls, that's actually blending itself quite well into the planning phase, not just the construction phase.
Because they're using the controls platform to commission the building. Is that why?
No, because they're trying to use previous data, especially the hyperscalers, to figure out whether a schedule in the future is realistic or not. So they're trying to build benchmark databases because they're building so much that they're trying to figure out, hey, for this next project, is this even realistic? Right.
So they're trying to measure the accuracy. They're handicapping the efficiency. Is that what they're doing?
No, they're trying to compare a project schedule that's just in the planning phase to what's actually happened in the past, to judge whether that's realistic or not, to judge whether that schedule is realistic or not. So benchmark databases, that's like a pretty popular thing that we hear customers talk about very often. And I think the industry will get there. I think the first step is starting to measure plan versus actual in a rigorous manner. And it's not being done at that scale right now. Right now, it's still very reliant on manual input and things like that. But I think software tools like ours are making that easier to judge and measure plan versus actual quickly. And eventually, that's going to lead to benchmark databases where customers just say, hey, you know what? I don't think this is going to happen because 75% of our projects were behind on this activity. I don't think we're going to hit this. Let's put a little bit of float on that, right? Let's be a little bit realistic about that. Or they may say, hey, what are you talking about, right? Like in 70% of the cases, we beat that particular pace, right? We can go a little bit faster. And that just leads to better outcomes for everyone because everyone comes in with realistic expectations.
Well, tell me, not to shift gears a little bit, but it seems like a pretty incredible software tool, and I'm looking forward to talking more about it over the course of time. And I hope that the people that are listening have the opportunity to spend some time with you while you're still here, because it sounds phenomenal. It just seems like it sounds so good that it's going to take time for people to process it. Probably, I know.
Talk to my customers.
Well, that's the easiest way. You should have a reference list that goes with every proposal then says, call my customers, and these are their names. But I would say this. Tell me some cool stories. What it's been like to start your own company 8 years ago. I mean, I know I'm coming up on my 4th year, so I'm halfway there, and I've had some challenges, no doubt. I mean, it's been more humbling than I could ever imagine, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I remember when I was the president of a general contracting company, that was probably the most fun I had, right? Because once you're a CEO of a company, it's not as much fun. Don't you agree? I mean, you don't get to do all the cool shit. You're dealing with all the hard stuff, you know. It just seems like it's not as much fun. So tell me some of the things that you've got to do that have been fun in your experience as a CEO.
Fun, or war stories that are fun, that have fun
For me,
endings?
those are the fun ones. The messier, the better.
All right, I'll give you a quick war story. So we were a 6-person team. Second deal in the company, right on the finish line, multiple millions of dollars on the line. Customer says they'll sign at 4 p.m. We get an email in all caps at 3:52 p.m. Saying, we're not giving you the deal. Come back to us when you're serious. And we're like, what just happened here, right? And this is like 6.5 years ago, okay? And the gentleman who sent the email, a pretty hardcore guy, like hardcore. He could be an American gangster, right?
Oh, okay.
Really, really hardcore. So I was just like, what just happened here, right? And it turned out, and we discovered this later, it turned out that our lawyer had made a change to the contract, which in his mind didn't materially change the terms at all. But this customer thought it did. And it was literally a misunderstanding, and the guy was hot-tempered and things like that. So we could have reacted to that in lots of different ways. But what we did was, I just got on a plane and I showed up the next day. We were a 6-person team, and I just showed up at his trailer and I said, listen, I really think our software could help. It looks like there's been a misunderstanding. I'd love to talk this out. And he cussed at me and things like that. And I just said, you can cuss at me all you want as long as I have a contract by the end of the day. And that kind of threw him off because he wanted to get into a little bit of a fight.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's okay. You can punch me as much as you want, but I really think this can help you. And we walked out with me and this tough guy having a Cabernet. And we signed the agreement and we flew back. And he was like, sorry for the misunderstanding.
How gangster is that? That's pretty gangster.
So the learning was just like, I don't know, keep a cool mind and try to help your customers and just show up.
But that's dude, they're gonna have good days and bad days, right? And you got to be able to white knuckle those days in which shit's hitting the fan like that, especially if it's a big deal. But that's awesome. It's a testament to your grit. So congratulations for coming around that.
Thank you.
What other cool stories? Like, if there's not a lot of time for people to be able to process the entire podcast, what do you want them to know? What's the biggest takeaway when people are like, hey, listen, it's Doxel. What do you want them to know? You want them to what's the one message you want them to know about your software or you that would get them more interested? Because this podcast won't make anybody a subject matter expert on your stuff, but it will hopefully get a few that are like, I need to go pay more attention and understand more about what that software can do. Right. So what do you want to leave with them?
I've probably said this several times, but I'm going to say it again as you've given me the opportunity, and thanks for doing that. Doxel builds software that delivers data centers faster. It works in the real world, and our customers are our best advertisement.
Okay. Well,
that's all I'd say.
All right. Well, awesome. What other stories you want to know about you?
I don't know how deep we can go.
Do you drink? So if someone met you downstairs an hour from now and they wanted to get a drink with you,
I do drink.
That Cabernet.
I've been experimenting after listening to a Huberman podcast, going off drinking off and on.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm at DCAC, so of course I drink.
So I'm the same. Yeah, I am going through a really interesting phase where I think, I grew up. I'm older than you. I'm 48, and I grew up where alcohol's good and weed is bad. And now I'm like, alcohol is definitely bad. So does that make weed good? But I have found that it does allow me to be a little bit more creative sometimes. If anything, it helps me sleep. But I'm changing to where I'm not drinking nearly as much because it's definitely had like a really negative impact on my output and productivity. But it's hard because in these engagements, it's hard to hang out with people when you don't have a drink in your hand sometimes. And it's just maybe the way we've been conditioned.
It's good to unwind and relax.
Every now and then it's good to just chill,
That's
but
great.
So last thing I have, and this is probably the most.
By the way, before you move to that, I just want to give you a massive compliment because this is, you talked about drinking and it's good to unwind and things like that. I just want to make an exception and say the speaking events, the speaking engagements at this conference are the highest quality that I've seen on the data center circuit.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why is because I felt like I was in a living room with my friends. And they were real conversations.
Nice.
With no BS. And I got to learn something and I really enjoyed it. And I mean, a lot of folks say that, but
I appreciate it.
It's coming through. So congrats to you.
I have an amazing team, and I have there was times where people were like, why do we have like a team that size? And I'm like, because that size is what's necessary to make that big of an impact. And I'm glad to see that it's working, because they're the ones that do all these things. I'm just kind of showing up along the ride and figuring out how I could help them. But I appreciate your feedback, and I'm going to make sure that my team gets it, because they're the ones that build these things. I'm just kind of showing up. I just get to do this. I get to sit down and talk shit with people, and I want to understand, like, whose ass did you have to kick to break your hand?
You know, Karen, who's on my team and who's the star behind this.
You got to hold it up. There needs to be a story.
She told me I need to change the story.
Yes, but I want a story that includes an axe, if that's possible.
I'm going to tell you the truth. The truth is, I have a weak ligament because I fell down hiking. And my wife and I had a romantic moment, and I picked her up. And I do it all the time, and I just injured my ligament doing it, and she doesn't feel bad at all.
That's hilarious. So what's the story here? You got to get it surgically fixed? Or?
No, I'll be fine in like a month and a half. It just got to come off. I got to do some physiotherapy. I've gone through this before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the previous story was I fell off a Harley Davidson XL883 iron.
Is that for real?
Yeah, that happened like 4 years ago. So I fell down doing that. I've had a little bit, I love motorsports, so I used to race cars. And
so Let me tell you this: as we sat down and had this nerd conversation, if someone had bet me $1 million that you were riding Harley Davidsons and racing cars, I think that we are going to have to become friends over the course of time, because you sound like my type of people. So look, I hope this is your first conference for us. First
DCAC.
Last one, or
no? Definitely not the last one.
Listen, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for your support. Thanks for collaborating and giving us, like, I've never heard of this product. This is what this platform's for, is so we can take those ones and advance them. If it's going to improve the industry, then we're all about it. So thank you for coming to DCAC Live this week. Thank you for joining the revolution, data center revolution. And thanks for your story. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for a super authentic podcast and a super authentic conference, and for putting it all together, man.
No, it's awesome. It's the joy. Thanks, bud.
Awesome.